Hello everybody, welcome into my latest live last minute video. Today's the 13th of November, it's Wednesday, and it's 2024. And yesterday we were reviewing this Maxtang mini PC. Maxtang is a fairly new brand, new to us anyway, and we had a couple issues with the first machine they asked us to review. They've addressed those issues, but now we have a couple of new issues, and one being that we're getting a security alert from Windows that secure boot is not enabled, and that's down in the system tray under your Windows security settings, which include your antivirus. And you always want to make sure you get a good green checkbox there in that lower corner, something you should be keeping an eye on every day. Now, I want to thank our friend DougBetts over at Live Windows Training with DougBetts, who went through a very thorough analysis of this. And I have to say, the response from Maxtang was kind of expected. We let them know. They thanked us for bringing it to their attention. They'll take it to the engineers and they'll get back to us. I don't believe when you buy something new, you should have to repair it. And if you were to receive something in this condition where the secure boot is not enabled by default, I'm not recommending you repair it. On the other hand, if you have a computer and you're wondering why you're getting this error message, and perhaps you've been living with it for some time, hopefully the tips we follow from DougBetts' earlier video from today will resolve it for us. But keep in mind, I've never done this before. I've never had to. Beyond just going in and turning secure boot on, that's as far as my experience goes with solving this particular issue. This is a little bit different than anything I've seen before. And I've not tried this off camera. So I'm going to follow DougBetts' advice live, unscripted, and we're going to experience this together. I think Doug did a great job explaining it. We've got a link to his earlier video from today in our video notes below, and I'll share with you the particular segment that we're going to follow with. Now again, if you had ordered this machine or any machine where it required some kind of a repair, my advice is make sure you order it from somewhere you can send it back, like Amazon. You should not have to fix anything new. Now hopefully Maxtang will take this information and improve their production process so that your experience as a customer will be a happy one. You know, that your expectations will be met, and Maxtang will hopefully build a reputation as taking care of the customers, making sure that everything is as it should be, and that, you know, otherwise, you know, they're just starting out. Maxtang is a company probably you've never heard of until I introduced you to it. And there's a lot of hope for them to grow and become this great company. So don't hold it against them. They're just starting out. They're learning. And they keep using our suggestions and improving. I expect to see that some more. And as long as they keep doing that, we'll be very interested in seeing how they progress in the months and years ahead. Now, that being said, since we have it and we're waiting for Maxtang to respond to us on how to proceed, you know, I have two choices here. One, I didn't pay for this. They sent it to me. So I just put it on a shelf and wait for them to tell me what to do. Because ultimately, that's what a customer would do. You'd reach out to support. And I'm saying if I were the customer, I'd just send the thing back. I wouldn't reach out to support, wait, and have to do some work when I just paid for something, you know, especially a $600 mini PC, which is all good, by the way. Good hardware, good performance. There's not much to not like about this computer. Certainly things could be improved. However, everything comes at a price. So at some point you got to realize that for what you're paying and what you're getting, there's a compromise. And I think they could have done a better job with the cooling fan. I think the 2.5-inch drive option needs to be removed, or they need to add cooling into the bottom half of the machine if they want you to encourage you to keep adding more heat in the bottom of the machine in the form of more storage. Anyway, we went all over that yesterday. If you missed yesterday's video, it's available there for you to watch. A link to it, of course, in the video description below today's video. Also, I missed a couple of gift cards yesterday, and my apologies, my deepest apologies. I don't know why I didn't see them. But I want to just take a moment to shout out, as soon as I find it here, David Coleman and Charlie Purdy, who contributed during yesterday's show, and I just never saw it. So my thanks for everybody that supports the show so we don't turn into some paid corporate sponsorship puppet show with scripting and editing and you know, like those big million-plus subscriber YouTube tech channels. I don't, if I have to do what they're doing in order to reach those kind of viewer numbers, I'd rather be without the viewers, quite frankly, because I don't want to make that kind of content. I want my content to be real. I want it to be exactly what I'm doing, and I hope that you appreciate it. If so, any sort of support we get from you, it makes us, enables us to continue making more new content more often. So we have a big build coming up on Friday, and an even bigger build the next Friday, and another build the Friday after that. And it's all made possible through your contributions and your support. Now, with that being said, let me just jump over to the chat real quick. Where's my chat room? There it is. And shout out, hello to everybody joining us here in this sort of last minute video here. I see Bull142 says hello, Mike Ely and Rick Lakes, Robert Mortensen and Mark Gaines. Of course, Marlena's in the chat room doing all the background administrative work that comes along with having a YouTube channel that produces videos regularly. It's a lot of work on, it's a lot of paperwork, let's just say, digital paperwork. And let's see who else says hello. Shamim Keshviras joins us, and Marsman50 says hello. There's Scott Loosemore, and Phil Stodd, and Ron Barnish, and Rip City Raider, and Ken all say hello. Now, I can't emphasize enough how surprised I was to get a message from DougBetts saying, hey, I know how you can fix that problem. Now, first of all, I don't think you should have to. But second, you may have this problem and not even know you've got the problem with the computer you're using right now. Never mind who makes it, never mind if it's a mini computer or if it's a desktop or a laptop. Let me switch over here and I'm going to show you what we're looking at, because I want you to make sure your security is good, because you're connecting to the internet and there's a lot of bad actors on the internet. Let me switch over here to full screen mode for me, and I can move my keyboard and mouse over here. And where I want you to look is down in this lower right corner. Never mind the malware bytes. Let's close that out. Let's look down right here, and you see that globe, and it's got a hazard symbol on it. Now, a lot of times this may be hidden back behind this little arrow here. I don't think Microsoft should be hiding this by default. And the way you unhide it is you right-click on the taskbar, go to taskbar settings, and under other system tray icons, make sure that your Windows security notification icon is turned on. I also turn on my Bluetooth device icon and my Windows Update status icon. I want those visible at all times. I don't want them hidden where an end user wouldn't even know they were there to look for them. And right away, fresh out of the box, this machine arrives to us in a state of hazard for device security. And I would not click the dismiss button. The only things I dismiss would be this account protection, which is like for a Microsoft account, which I don't use. And then sometimes there's like a Microsoft OneDrive, again, requiring a Microsoft account. Those I dismiss. I don't dismiss anything else. Everything should be taken very seriously, except for things related to Microsoft accounts, in which case, set a good password or don't have a Microsoft account, which I don't have. Now we can click Learn More about this, and essentially it's going to tell us about what Secure Boot is. And we're not going to go through all of this today, but essentially Maxtang has sent us a computer that supports all of this, but they've not turned it on, and I could not figure out what sequence of events I had to follow to make this turn on. It should have been on from the factory. Every computer you order, be it a laptop, a desktop, or a mini PC, should already have this enabled. You should never have to do this. So again, Maxtang, they're new, they're still learning, so it's all good. We all start somewhere. And while we wait for them to tell us how to fix it, our friend DougBetts has already made a video. Now I'm going to go over to, let's see, I'll bring up this window right here, and let's see if this works. I'm hoping this will work. We're going to go to our window capture mode, and I'm hoping I'm going to get audio on this. We're going to go to our window capture from earlier today, and I'm hoping I'm going to get audio on this. This is from earlier today, and you'll see him about 21 minutes into the video. This is from earlier today, and you'll see him about 21 minutes into the video. This is from earlier today, and you'll see him about 21 minutes into the video. This is from earlier today, and you'll see him about 21 minutes into the video. This is from earlier today, and you'll see him about 21 minutes into the video. This is from earlier today, and you'll see him about 21 minutes into the video. This is from earlier today, and you'll see him about 21 minutes into the video. This is from earlier today, and you'll see him about 21 minutes into the video. This is from earlier today, and you'll see him about 21 minutes into the video. This is from earlier today, and you'll see him about 21 minutes into the video. This is from earlier today, and you'll see him about 21 minutes into the video. This is from earlier today, and you'll see him about 21 minutes into the video. This is from earlier today, and you'll see him about 21 minutes into the video. This is from earlier today, and you'll see him about 21 minutes into the video. This is from earlier today, and you'll see him about 21 minutes into the video. I'm going to pause this for a moment, because I am a bit concerned that pause this for a moment, because I am a bit concerned that pause this for a moment, because I am a bit concerned that pause this for a moment, because I am a bit concerned that pause this. Turn that off. And let's go back over here for a second. This may be more complicated than I was planning for on a last-minute stream, and I apologize if the audio got weird. So I'm just going to put a link to Doug's video, and we're going to follow through Doug's steps. So I apologize for that audio loop. I cannot hear it without creating an audio loop unless I put headphones on. And so doing this live without an audio engineer working behind the scenes requires a lot of planning ahead, which obviously we didn't do for today. It's all very, very much live and unscripted, so that's okay. You can absolutely check out Doug's video, which is what we should be doing anyway, directing everybody over there. So with that being said, the only other thing I think that, oh, I see what happened. I see what happened. I had another window open with audio on, monitoring my feed, so you were hearing my delayed feed on top of Doug's feed. Regardless, let's jump back over to, essentially, I think I got the gist of what Doug was saying. Maybe I didn't. There's only one way to know for sure. So we're going to jump over to the desktop over here. And the first thing we want to do is get into the BIOS. So let me jump over to full screen on this so I can see it the same way you guys do. And again, we've got that hazard symbol down here. We want to resolve this. This is very important if you're going to be connected to the internet. So I'm going to restart the computer, and I'll just rapidly hit the delete key. Right after the restarting text goes away and the machine resets itself, it switches right here, it goes to no signal. And as it starts to turn itself back on again, or reboots, I start rapidly hitting the delete key on my keyboard. Now, as you recall, we were messing around with the BIOS and we were playing around with the password information here. And I'm going to just change that password and remove it because I had just set it to password. So we're just creating a new password of nothing by hitting enter, and that will clear that. Then I want to save and exit and make sure that that change sticks. See, that happened so fast it already started to boot. Once we get back into the desktop, we're going to try this one more time. I want to get back into the BIOS the same way it was, same condition that it was in when we received the computer without any modifications, as I was trying to figure this out. And it's a little confusing, and not every computer BIOS is the same. And Doug, again, does a great job of pointing out who makes the BIOS and how he's got a laptop with a different BIOS and it's called something else. But regardless of that, be sure and watch Doug's video from earlier today. If you are watching Doug's video and you notice there's no audio, that is not a problem with your computer. He had a configuration issue for the first 7 minutes of his show today. So just fast forward. If you want to get to the subject matter, you want to get to about 20 minutes in the video. But don't freak out that you think something's wrong with your computer because he's there talking and you can't hear him. It was just a configuration issue on his end. He wasn't made aware of it. until about 7 minutes in. And, you know, you're not a real YouTuber if you haven't done that at least a half dozen times. So it's just something that inevitably happens to us all. Feel the pain. Now we're going to go over here to security, and then under secure boot, hit enter. And what Doug was pointing out is up at the top of the screen, it says setup. It says system mode setup. You see that? And what we want to do is we want to, I'm trying to remember this now, I think we changed this to enabled. Secure boot can be enabled when system is in user mode. So instead of setup mode, this is where I was confused. I thought it was talking about Windows. What it's saying is up there where it says system mode is in setup. We want system mode in user mode. So I guess the way we do that is we're going to choose, what is it, standard? No. We choose custom, restore factory keys, press yes, export key management, no. Let me try this again. We want to change that, restore factory keys, yes, and then we don't really get anything else after that. If we go to standard, you'll see that restore factory keys is shaded out. We can't even get to it. And we remain in this setup mode. So we might have still a different layout to what Doug had, because he was getting a second dialog box that pops up when you say yes to this. And our mode is not changing. So I'm wondering if it's a BIOS configuration issue that would require a BIOS update to fix. And I'm just going off of memory here. It's not letting us change this until our system mode changes from, and this is something I was not aware of. So I appreciate Doug bringing this to my attention. At the very top of the screen, where it says system mode setup, we want that to say system mode user. So let's reset. How do we get to reset to setup mode? See, I want reset to setup mode to become available, and I'm not quite sure how I get there. So I'm going to just play around with a bunch of settings. That's clearly not helping. Restore factory keys, yes. Factory key provision is enabled. What if I disable that and go back? Restore factory keys, still not giving us that option, standard. It still remains in setup mode no matter what I do here. So, go back to custom, expert key management. I think maybe there's something in here I'm missing. Well, that's not going to work. And that's not going to work. Interesting. It does seem like it's an incomplete BIOS if I had to guess, because we're definitely not getting the same screens that Doug was demonstrating. Otherwise, I would have certainly even stumbled upon it. And what I find interesting is this reset to setup mode option is just not appearing no matter what I do. There's clearly a step here that I am missing. Let me try save changes and let's do that. Restore defaults. What if we restore user defaults? There's probably nothing saved there under user setup, user defaults. We've got to get system mode out of setup. That's the key here. And it just won't let us do this until we're in the user mode. And it says we have to enroll a platform key, but we generally, that's all handled automatically through the system. And what Doug would get when he restores the factory keys is you get an option if you want to restart, and we're not seeing that here. So a little bit different. And factory key provision enabled or disabled. I really never quite seen these or paid attention to these particular requests before. So with regards to the platform key, you'll see it's failing to update the platform key. And I am very confused if that is an issue from the Windows 11 install version they're using. That this normally, from my perspective, this all happens automatically. And I think so long as, well, let's roll the EFI image. What happens here? No idea. Selecting a file, I don't know. I don't know which file it's looking for. Oh, that's interesting. Let's go back. Still says we're in setup mode and we have to be in user mode. Interesting. Nothing seems to be allowing us to change that to user mode. So there's a piece of this I'm missing. And again, nothing I've ever had to do with a PC before. Normally this is all handled automatically through Windows. So I'm not exactly sure which piece I am missing. And we'll go back over to save these changes. I just want to go back and see if that made any difference. We'll save and exit and reboot the machine. I suspect we haven't done anything. Save and exit. See, there's save and reset and save and exit. I think this is an error in the BIOS as well. Because I believe those both do the exact same thing. So I think Maxtang needs to work on the BIOS. I think that's what's happening here. I'm not exactly sure, but it's something different. Now, while that boots, let me just jump back over to the chat room and see if you guys are telling me that I'm missing something here, because it's quite possible. Turn on, TWC Coster says, turn on Secure Boot, then choose Custom, restore factory keys, then save and exit, then reload the BIOS. Well, we'll give that a shot. I mean, I'm absolutely baffled by this issue. It's confusing me. Certainly, some changes in a BIOS do require you to save and exit and restart the machine for those changes to take effect. DougBetts was able to do this without rebooting. That's why I've been trying to replicate what he demonstrated, and it's definitely a little different for us. So let's go down here, and we'll go once again over to restart. And we're going to jump back into that BIOS, see if there's anything any different. Why did the password come back? Let's get rid of that password. So that deletes that, and then we'll go back over to Secure Boot. We're still in setup mode. We cannot enable Secure Boot, it just simply won't allow us to, right? And we can't change anything under Secure Boot mode unless we go into Custom first. You'll see that those options are all grayed out. So we choose Custom and Restore Factory Keys, what we can do, and say yes. And then if we want to save and exit at this point, we can hit Escape, run over here to Save, Changes, and Exit. And then one more time, as it reboots, we'll go back into the BIOS. And I don't believe anything is going to change, but I'll be happy if it does. I'll tell you that right now. So we go back over to Security, back under Secure Boot, and we're still under Secure, we're still under Setup. Nothing has changed here. Absolutely nothing. So we just have this expert key management thing here, and again with the platform key, it should be grabbing all this automatically. Factory key provision, restore factory keys. There are no factory keys. That's just it. And again, I think the keys are normally provided through the Windows 11 installer. It says allow an EFI image to run in secure boot mode. So that's like a bootable USB drive is what we're referring to here, right? A PE or pre-installation environment of Windows if you needed to do some hard drive repair. But then you've got this platform key, key exchange keys, authorized signatures forbidden, authorized timestamps, and OS recovery signatures of all. Now normally I don't even see this in a BIOS. So if we turn factory provision off, and then we'll save and exit that because they're not being provided by the factory. They're being provided typically through the Windows installer, which is not the same as, say, a corporate environment where, and again, I'm guessing on this, but I'm trying to make sense of it. Restore the factory keys, and then we're still in setup mode. Save and exit. And we can do this all day. It doesn't seem, well, couldn't get back in there quick enough. So yeah. Oh, there's DougBetts joining us now. He says, try expert key management, then restore factory keys. Notice the right side of the screen says force system to user mode. I did not see that. So let's retry one more time. So we're going to restart. Doug's here to save the day. And Doug says I should not need to restart. Hear that, TWC Cotster? It's not me saying it. Okay, let's do this again. It's hard for me to do this and watch the chat room, but let me see what I can do here. Let me make this screen a little bit bigger. Maybe if I don't go full screen, I can see both screens. Really need a second monitor. Okay, Doug says, try expert key management. So we go to secure boot, expert key management. Then he says, restore factory keys, right here. Force system to user mode. That's what it says on the top right. Force system to user mode. So I hit enter, right? And we want yes. So we go to yes. Should not need to restart. Okay. And then I hit escape to go back. And we're still in setup mode. We're still not in user mode. There is a slight delay between when I talk and when you guys hear me, so I will slow down a bit. And DougBetts says that is not working the same as I experienced. Well, I'm glad we agree because it's very puzzling to me. Now, I did think their Windows 11 install was a bit odd. And I'm wondering if I did my own Windows 11 install, if that might fix it. Or is it a BIOS issue? I don't know. System is in user mode. So Doug might have touched on something here that's interesting. When we go to restore factory keys, and it says force system to user mode. Press yes to proceed, press no to cancel. What if we leave it at that? We hit escape and escape, and let's save changes and exit. Let's go back into it one more time, having only made that one change. just rapidly hitting delete so I can get back to the security section. It does not seem to be making any difference at all. Now, I could always make an Acronis image of this. There's nothing important on it. It's just that if Maxtang sends us instructions to do with their installer, we will no longer have that install to follow. Unless this continues on a fresh install of Windows 11. And again, you should not have to do this on a brand new machine, especially on a $600 brand new machine. Now, if we go back over to save and exit, you'll see there are defaults, the user defaults and just regular factory defaults. And even if we reset this to load the optimized defaults and then we choose save and exit, it doesn't make any difference. We did this during yesterday's show, and it's frustrating because it's unfamiliar to me. Like, I've never had to go through this process before, or at least to this level. When we received that minis for a mini PC that did not have Secure Boot enabled, all we did was go into the BIOS and choose enable. That's all we did. It won't even let us do that, right? We're still in setup mode, and nothing we seem to do allows that to go into user mode. So I'm not sure. You know, I've never seen all these options before. I've never had to use them in my career. I've been installing brand new machines, building brand new machines. I don't do this on custom builds. I don't do this on other machines we review. This is bizarre. The BIOS is very familiar to me. We've seen the same BIOS manufacturer on numerous machines. I can't help but wonder if there's something wrong in the BIOS. And I'm not sure we can fix this in the BIOS itself from a user endpoint anyway. With Secure Boot mode being standard, let me save and exit. And let's go back in one more time. Even though you should not have to save and exit for these changes to take effect, because it's not working as expected, I think the steps may not be what's expected either. We're still in setup mode. It says you have to enroll the platform key. I mean, it's being very clear on that. So the question is, where does the platform key come from? And I do believe the platform key comes from Windows. Now here it says you want to load the factory default, and you can say yes or no. If I say yes, it fails, and if I say no, we go back to update and say no, then we point it to, I suppose, our boot drive. And there's a public key, an authenticated variable. I have no idea. That one doesn't work. Update, no. Again, back over to EFI, back over to boot, and back over to authenticated. That fails. I feel like I'm getting close. Let's go back to EFI again. This time we'll choose Microsoft boot. Oh, we got a bunch of stuff in here. Interesting. We are in the US, and I don't know why this would be different, but wow, we got a lot of different stuff in here. There's English US. I don't know if this is even in the right spot. Memtest, boot manager. Okay, boot manager, public key, failed. All of that. You go through all that. No. No. System volume isn't containing anything, so we're definitely in the right place by going to EFI, and then it's just a question, is it under boot? I mean, I would think that's it right there. It doesn't seem to accept either of these. Would I have to enable this first? Oops. That's a lot of steps, let me tell you. Let's try boot. x64 authenticated, yes. failed. Update. EFI, boot, x64, public. Public and authenticate. Neither one of those is working, but I feel like it's in there somewhere. DougBetts says, when I select platform key, I get different submenus, and then it does populate the adjacent fields. You'll see all these fields in mine all say 0. Everything's emptied. Factory key provision, again, is that supposed to be on or off? I don't know without having another one to compare it to. It's nothing I've ever had to deal with before, so it may have been there in all the builds I've done, or maybe not. I don't pay attention to it. Why would I? It's nothing I've ever had to deal with. Now again, I can do a clean install of Windows 11, and maybe that's not a bad idea anyway, because when I install Windows 11, it's my understanding it's during the install that it's setting the secure boot keys. It's my understanding. I've never had to require knowing for sure one way or the other. All I know is it works. I don't think about why it works. I only think about why it doesn't work. So if things are continuing to work, then I don't need to learn why. It's only the things that don't work that require repair or my attention as to reverse engineering or determining the cause, the resolution. And that's why I've never had to deal with this before. Now, I don't think we're losing anything if we wipe out Windows and reinstall it. It's just, as I mentioned, if Maxtang does send us specific instruction that deals with their operating system, we will not be able to follow that instruction if we end up fixing it. On the other hand, if this doesn't fix it, then whatever instruction they give us would still apply. So what the heck? Let's go ahead and put my Windows 11 flash drive in here. And then let's go to, let's see, we'll click Start and Shut Down. We're going to go back in the BIOS one more time. I should maybe update these drivers before I begin. That would probably be a good idea. Let me boot it one more time. And let me run our driver extraction on it, just in case. Although for all I know, it could be a driver that's causing it. Phil Stodd said the Windows 11 flash drive should have the Secure Boot MOK key on it already. So again, I don't know what that is. That's the second time somebody's mentioned an MOK key. I don't know what an MOK key looks like, or if it applies to any install. It can't be that easy to bypass, right? Is it something during the install that is applied? That would be my guess. However, whatever's on that flash drive is the same for every computer I build, so they can't all possibly be using the same secure boot. That's got to be decided during the install. That's the part I don't get, so I'm not sure what the MOK does, but I don't think just adding it now off the flash drive would make any sense. So the next thing I want to do is just simply extract our drivers just to make life a little smoother, just in case. So if I look at my flash drive, I've got my little text file here that should give us that PowerShell command to extract the drivers. So here under somewhere in here. Oh, that's my Windows 11 flash drive, not my utilities flash drive. That explains that little mystery. Hold on a second. Let me temporarily remove my Windows 11 installation media and instead plug in my utilities flash drive so I can grab that command. And we've got a video that demonstrates this. You know, I don't use any third-party software for drivers, and I don't think you should either. But we certainly don't use it in our business, nor do we recommend any third-party driver software. Let's see, reset Windows Update, turn off every, I don't know what that is. Windows 11 fixes, update check, driver backup. That's the one I want right there. Okay, create a backup folder. All right, let's do this. We're gonna run command prompt code. We could do this with one command. Just copy that. And whether we do PowerShell or command prompt, I think command prompt will work fine. Right click, run as administrator. Yes. Control V to paste that, and we want to go to C:\drivers. Does not exist. I thought that was going to make it. Replace this with the full path of the backup folder. So maybe I still have to make it. All right, that's fine. Let's just make a directory called drivers. And then let's run that command again. So it should be taking all drivers that we have, and some of these are going to be installed by default by Windows or Windows Update. So we don't need all of them. We can't separate them out. So we just grab them all. And then we can just back that directory up, right? So if I go back over here to my C drive, I should see a folder called drivers now, and that's contained, within that contains all of our drivers. Whether or not we need them, I don't know, but we'll just go ahead and we're going to just temporarily copy this onto some external media. I think there's enough room here on my flash drive. We'll just put it there for now. Nope, not enough room. We need how much space do we need? 2.11 gigs worth of drivers there. No problem. I have lots of flash drives, so we'll just eject this flash drive. And I'll put that back in my drawer. And I have another flash drive in here that should be empty. Yeah, this one will probably do the trick. Not the fastest, but that's okay. We're not moving that much data. Let me plug that in. This one should be blank. It is. And we'll just paste that drivers folder, all 2.11 gigs of it, right over to the flash drive. That'll just take a minute, just in case. DougBetts says his BIOS version is the same version number as mine, but his shows a copyright date of 2023, whereas the one on this Maxtang computer shows a copyright date of 2024. So there are some differences. Trevor wants to know if we have the original Windows 11 image from the factory. No, but sometimes manufacturers enable you to download that. So companies like Ace Magic and Cambruri and Minisform may have an image that you can download. I don't recall that the Maxtang had an image in the download section, but again, we weren't looking for that. If I jump over to, I'll tell you what, we can multitask, can't we? We can go over here and bring the browser up, and we can go to Maxtang's website. And we can look for support. Manuals, brochures, quick installation, certification. Like, I don't see anything for downloads necessarily. And if we go under products, this should be one of their latest products here. You'll see they've got motherboards and other things besides mini PCs. We're looking for, let's see, they've got all-in-one, mini PC right here. And you can see they've got a number of different models. These look like appliances, where there's no fans, they're passively cooled with giant heat sinks. Those are usually used as what we call embedded PCs. And what we're looking for, it should still be under a mini PC, but it's not an all-in-one. It's certainly not an older legacy product. Compact P, oh, wait a minute here, what's this? Here we go. And we're looking for this one right here. Click on that. Nothing happens. I think they're still working on this website because this is not taking us anywhere. But just out of the sake of, you know, experimentation, if we, oh, I'm being impatient. It finally came up. Never mind what I was about to say. As we look through this website, you'll see here it's got a section that says download. Now under download, we have GPU drivers, CPU drivers, IPU drivers, LAN drivers, and the audio chip drivers. There's also a data sheet, but I don't see anything for a BIOS, and I don't see anything for a complete reinstall if you have to reset the computer. I would assume that if they had it, it would be available here. I don't know what an IPU is. AMD IPU. But it's clearly, what does it say? Do not install. I don't know what that says. IPU drivers. Do not install. Okay, well, thanks for offering them to me. Do not use. There's a lot of confusion. All right, let me close this out. Did our drivers copied over? Good. All right, let me take the flash drive out and set it aside because we might need that. Let me put my Windows 11 installation media on here and let's wipe it out. I thought the install of this was a little funky to begin with, like it's a different version of Windows 11 than I install. And so what I'm going to do is restart the computer back into the BIOS and instruct it to restart from the flash drive. Now, I would not do this. If I paid $600 for this computer, I would not be doing this. I would not potentially void any warranty because I'm too impatient and I want it today. I would be sending this back or waiting till talk to support. If support doesn't get back to me fast enough and I'm anxious, just send it back. Buy something else. Don't buy the same thing. Buy preferably from another company where, you know, like I said, this is a brand new company, at least here in America, and they're still establishing, getting everything the way we're accustomed to having it. What I'm going to do is go with save and exit. There should be an override right here, and I want it to start from my flash drive, and that should begin our Windows 11 installer. I want to delete every partition on the current drive. Just wipe it out. I don't even care, right? Because I don't like that version of Windows anyway. So it was just bizarre the way it had me set it up. I'm going to choose next. We'll leave it to US here, and I'm accustomed to the questions that are being asked and how I'm answering them based on the US installer. They were using more of an international installer, so the out-of-box experience is slightly different. So I'm going to overwrite what they've done. We're going to click next here. I'm going to say I don't have a product key. We're going to deal with that later. We'll find out if there's one already registered here. We know it's Windows 11 Pro, and it shouldn't matter if it's any of the variants of Pro. I don't think, but let's find out. We'll hit next and agree to the license agreement. It's going to pop up and show us all the partitions that currently exist from the factory the way this drive was shipped to us, which I have no idea. There should be 4. There could be more than that. So we're looking strictly at disk 0. And you see all the multiple disk 0s here? These are all partitions on our internal drive. Disk 1 is my Windows 11 media installer, and you'll see there are 2 partitions on disk 1 and then unallocated space. In much the same way, we have 4 partitions on disk 0 with a 5th partition of unallocated space. What we want to do is click on each one of these disk 0s, knowing that we are permanently erasing all the data. Hit delete partition, and we're going to do that for 1, 2, 3, and 4, the order of which does not matter. But we want everything to become unallocated space, which is how a brand new drive that you order from Newegg or Amazon or wherever, if it's brand new, fresh out of the box, it should appear as just unallocated space. Because they don't know, you know, if you're going to put that in a Mac or a Linux machine, you don't know what format it needs or what file system it needs. So disk 0, just one instance of it that says unallocated space. The total size is just under 1 terabyte, which is what we call a terabyte. I hit next. Give it a second while it thinks. Again, Windows 11 24H2 is a little bit slower. And then it's verifying the summary of everything, and we're going to keep nothing. Well, it's a little late to tell us that now. And then we'll hit install, and now it's going to go ahead and repartition and reformat the internal drive and then copy over the Windows installation files. It'll reboot and then install Windows from those installation files that it just copied. So we will no longer need the Windows installation media plugged in. It doesn't hurt to leave it plugged in, but after your first boot, you're done with it, just so you know. What's great is how fast Windows 11 installs on a modern computer anyway. So this is not the discouraging task of reinstall that Windows used to be. DougBetts said his demo computer did not have Secure Boot enabled from the factory, and he had the same behavior as the Maxtang computer, but his solution does not apply here. I wished it did, because we'd already be done with today's video. But as with anything new that we're experiencing, it's kind of flips us upside down, and we have to reorient ourselves here to figure out where are we and how did we get here. You can wait for somebody to come collect you and reorient you, or you can orient yourself. If you've paid for a Sherpa and that Sherpa says, here's a map, go that way, you're on your own, that's not much of a Sherpa. I'd want a refund. So this is not normal. This should have already been done for us. And anytime we review a computer, you can go back and look at any of my previous reviews of other manufacturers or any of the builds we do, we don't run into this issue. We run into it once, and all we did was change a setting from disabled to enabled. That was it, we were done. Now, I don't know that this is going to solve it. I'm just guessing. I'm asking myself, what's different about this computer that's different about every other computer we've ever put on the bench in the history of putting computers on the bench? And the only thing I can tell you that I recognize as being different, just the process of elimination, Sherlock Holmes logic, that Windows out-of-box experience process was different. And if that's different, that tells me the install itself was different. And if that install was different, maybe that's why the secure boot mode is different. Or maybe it's a BIOS issue and we can't fix it without a BIOS update. That's also on the table as a possibility, as a potential suspect. And since there's nothing I can do with that suspect without further information, the only thing I can do is this right now. And that's why we're doing this. If this doesn't work, I'm out of ideas. At that point, I now have no choice but to wait for Maxtang to provide me a solution, which I am guessing is a BIOS update. Whenever we're diagnosing, it's always about what's different. So if we can eliminate what's the same, okay, this is the same, that's the same, you know, you go through the process, remove all those common denominators, see what you're left with. And so that's all I'm doing here. It's very simple. It's not really scientific in the sense that this is nothing more than critical thinking. If everything always works the same way, and all these things are different, desktops, laptops, mini PCs, none of them have this problem, but this one does. What's different about this one? And the only thing I can tell you, apart from this manufacturer being different, they're still using regular parts that everybody else uses. They're still using the same operating system everybody else uses. But it's a different version or flavor of Windows 11 in that it's more of an international. When you download Windows 11 to make your media, it wants to know where you are, right? Do you want the Italian version? Do you want the English version? Well, there is an international version. That means it's open to a lot of different configurations, and it does change the install. That's why it's not one size fits all for everybody. So we're going to go through this the same way we always do and see if we get any different results than we always get, right? It's very simple logic. So we're going to say United States here, and you're going to recognize I'm going through everything exactly the same as I always have before. We're going to skip the secondary keyboard layout. We're going to say I don't have internet. We'll put a username of user like we always do. Everything is always the same in order to find what's different. And then, you know, I do this stuff here, which honestly has nothing to do with our issue today. But again, we want to keep everything the same. And then let it finish the setup. John Williams joins us and says hello. Welcome in, John. And William Lynn and Scott say hello. Welcome in, guys. All right, so we're just now finishing the Windows 11 install. You see, that's not a big deal. The worst of it may be installing drivers, and even that, with the backup of the drivers already done, that should be super easy. Even if we didn't have the backup, there's nothing that Maxtang makes. There's, you know, Intel networking cards, and AMD chip, and GPU, and you'll get all your drivers specifically from those manufacturers. It's really easy. By backing up the drivers beforehand, it's free, doesn't cost anything, no third-party software is required, and it allows me just to be a little lazier. I'm all for working smarter, not working harder. So now here's my question. Now that we've booted, and before we go any further in this, let me take a look at our Microsoft security settings, which usually do have some hazards on a fresh install, but nothing that should require... Yeah, see, safe secure boot is off. So it's still, that does not help this mode here. And you will also notice in the bottom right corner, we're not connected to a network. That implies that the network card driver is not a part of Windows 11, and it has to be provided separately. So I'm going to say start without my data on this, even though we don't have internet anyway. Still have to go through this nonsense regardless. And of course, it tells us we're not connected. This is not normal. This is clearly in the BIOS. I mean, I'm pretty satisfied right now. This is a BIOS issue. Now, let me go ahead and remove my Windows 11 installer. Let's plug our driver's USB drive back in. And then we'll right-click on the Start menu. We're going to go to Device Manager, and you're going to see everything that's missing drivers. These are not included in Windows 11 because it's all too new. We're just going to go one by one, update driver, browse my computer, and I want to browse to the flash drive under the directory drivers. And I don't have to specify which directory. I just tell it, go look in there. You find it in there, and it does. And we can do that one by one. Or I think we can come up here, add drivers, and just tell it to just add all the drivers right here like that. It'll just search through all of them, and we don't have to go by one anymore. Now, you may not have that feature on an older version of Windows, just so you know. If you're looking for it, it's not there. But any modern version of Windows 11 should have that option from 23H2 forward. And now it's just going to load those drivers, each one without me going through one by one, which makes me a little lazier. I'm okay with that. Working smarter, not working harder. And it would load probably a little faster if I copied the drivers off the flash drive, but I didn't want to wait for that. So one way or another, I'm affected by the performance of the flash drive. But it's 2 gigs worth of drivers. It shouldn't take any longer to recover them than it did to back them up to begin with. So we'll let that run, and there's a little tip from your Uncle Carey. Now, we're still back to square one in regards to how are we solving this problem. When you see the screen blank out, that tells you a video driver is being loaded. So we'll just allow that to restart. Trevor Dunn says, I'm reading the manual for the Maxtang PC. It reads the user password must be set in the BIOS to give you admin rights in the BIOS. I think there's a translation issue with the manual. And I also think that the manuals can vary slightly from one model to the next. So unless you're reading the specific manual, and that specific manual for this specific PC wasn't just a copy and paste internally, which is what, you know, we see a lot of that from the Asian manufacturers, where they said that the maximum amount of RAM was 64 gigs, when we all know the maximum amount of RAM on DDR5 is 96 on a dual channel SO-DIMM. That's not machine specific. That's just the biggest module they make is 48 gigs. And if you can only have two of them, well, then 96 is your max. DDR4, 64 is your max, because the biggest SO-DIMM you can get is 32. So it doesn't matter what the motherboard says. It doesn't matter what the manual says. They're often wrong. I wouldn't put too much trust into these manuals. There is nowhere to enter a password that's required or requested. We're going to go ahead and restart now with all the drivers installed. And now, when we restart and go back in the device manager, we should hopefully not have any more unrecognized devices or devices that are not loading properly due to driver-related issues. In theory, we've just made our life so much easier by running that free command and making a backup of the drivers. And you should do that anyway, whether you think you're going to need them or not. Sometimes you need them when an unexpected event happens. So it's always good to be prepared just in case. It takes just a minute to do it, and just keep them in a drawer somewhere so you have them. And hopefully you never need them. But it's always better to never need them, but have them, than the other way around. So we booted again. We're right-click on the desktop. We're connected to the internet now because that Ethernet driver loaded. We'll go to Device Manager, and hopefully everything's happy. And it is. Everything looks good. You'll see it sees the TPM module. This is not a TPM issue, which is what we've seen with computers failing Windows 11 compliance. But if we go back into the BIOS, well, if we go back, first of all, to our Security Center, you'll see it's still telling us we have an issue here. It's the only issue we have. Everything else is happy. It's just this. And there's nothing we can do from within. This is just going to take us to a Microsoft page online that tells us what Secure Boot is and the requirements. It says before the PC is deployed, you as the OEM store the Secure Boot databases on the PC. This includes the signature database, revoke signature database, and key enrollment key database. These databases are stored on the firmware in non-volatile RAM. That's your BIOS at manufacturing time. Well, there you go. I think it just sort of answered our question. After the PC's turned on, the signature databases are checked against the platform key. If the firmware is not trusted, the UEFI firmware must initiate OEM-specific recovery to restore trusted firmware. If there's a problem with the Windows Boot Manager, the firmware will attempt to boot a backup copy of the Windows Boot Manager. If this also fails, the firmware must initiate OEM-specific remediation. Now imagine if that was all written in Chinese and then translated to English. I mean, that barely makes any sense to most people. It barely makes sense to me, written by Microsoft. And this is a problem when we see these manuals that the manufacturers are releasing for their products. They tend to be, in my experience, quite useless. If we go back into the BIOS one more time here, we'll go to restart. It appears the BIOS is incomplete, like it wasn't quite ready to be released. There's a final piece. Again, I'm guessing, but it looks like there's a final piece here of deploying keys. It's just not there. It's not here. Restore factory keys. Well, there's no factory keys to restore, and I believe that's why user mode is not working. The idea that we can enroll an image is interesting to me. Oh, that's the flash drive. Let me unplug that flash drive because that's confusing me. Enroll the EFI, and now I don't know which one it is. Why do we have a windows.old file folder? Why is that there? No idea. I'm guessing. This is all a big guess for me. This is our recovery partition. That's our flash drive. So this one right here, 0x, where is it? The second one appears to be our internal NVMe drive. These are the files and folders on that drive. Whatever it's looking for, I don't know what it is. It's telling us we absolutely have to have the keys. We need this platform key. And where we're supposed to get that from, you'd think clicking yes would load that key, and it fails. So going over to no and loading the key manually, I don't know what file what it's called or where it's located. But clearly there's no password being requested of us to get into any function of this BIOS. We can access everything. And if a user password were required, where would we put it? This is for setting the password. You see on the upper right, it says to set an administrator password, and this is to set a user password. The option to set a password is there if no password previously exists. Otherwise, it would just say to enter the password. Enter the password that was previously set. But because no password was previously set, you have to set one first. If you don't set one, then you're not locking anything out. Like I don't set a password when I set up my user account, so when I restart the computer, it boots straight into Windows. But if I do set a password, then as Windows starts, you've got to enter the password for that user account before it'll let you to the desktop. So the password, there is no password to enter because we've never set one, and there's no place to enter a password that was set by the factory. So far as I can tell, their option is non-existent for that, doesn't exist. That's why these user manuals are usually, in my experience, quite useless. Again, I don't understand the save changes and reset versus save changes and exit. That makes no sense to me. And I just don't know, without taking another machine and really dismantling the BIOS in some detail, that would even be beneficial. By, let's say we had another BIOS and we'd be able to go into secure boot and look at our keys. Just because I can enter the same key from one computer to another, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's got to authenticate. It's like having a product key to Microsoft Office. It ain't gonna work after you used it the first time, you know? This idea that we can load a platform key by telling it no is quite interesting to me if I had a platform key, which I don't see. And I still don't understand why I have a windows.old file. That's kind of weird. That usually occurs after you do an upgrade, say from one Windows version to another. I would assume that any sort of key would be an encrypted file. It wouldn't just be out in the open. That would kind of defeat the purpose, wouldn't it? But I don't know. Public key or authenticated key is just not going to take it. That's why I would think you have to enroll it first. but it won't. I don't know where it would be. I don't see it. It just doesn't seem to be here. MFT, I think, is for Microsoft, something to deal with Microsoft, and nothing there. I mean, you could spend all day just clicking on everything. A painful way to get something done. Just blindly throw darts at the wall until one sticks, if any one sticks, or you're just completely wasting time. Which is why you shouldn't be involved in this on a brand new machine that you just purchased. Send it back. Or, you know, ask support if you want to, but I would just send it back. Add a recovery password, delete, client recovery. Yeah, none of this should be. You know, I can, like I said, I'm probably just spinning my wheels here, guessing, hoping to get lucky. But I am not a person you want with you at a casino. I lose immediately. I am a terrible gambler. I think I owe Subaru Mike like 3 dinners from all of the Sunday football games that we've placed friendly dinner bets on. And whatever team I'm betting on, be sure and bet against it if you want to win. Let's see. You know, what stinks is it keeps kicking me back out instead of letting me just pick the next thing. I keep forgetting where I'm finding it. Yeah, I don't think it's any of this stuff. Which explains why it's not working. Yeah, none of that's right. Somewhere in there it's looking for something. And I do believe, you know, based on what we just read from the Microsoft support page there, that it needs to be in the NVRAM. It needs to be set at the factory, and it just wasn't set. That's what it appears like to me, and I don't think this is something we can fix. Luck of the draw. Doman 2000 reiterates what we've already demonstrated, but obviously what the manual says and what we experience are two different things. There does not appear to be any default keys in the BIOS. That's the problem. From everything we've gathered from the beginning of this video, there appear to be no keys in the BIOS to restore. Therefore, all we're doing is going around in circles, and reading the manual isn't going to put those keys in the BIOS. That has to be done by the manufacturer. We can't do that. Now, maybe somebody, one viewer out there somewhere that understands BIOS programming would be able to tell us how to do it, but that's not a normal end user thing, nor is it anything that anybody should have to do. Like I said, we can build a brand new system, buy a motherboard, buy a chip. All of this is already ready for us to roll. When we buy a mini PC, it's already ready for us to roll. Sometimes, yes, you may have to turn Secure Boot on, but anything regarding the keys should already be in the BIOS, and if they're not there, nothing you can type and nothing you can say or do or read is going to magically make those keys appear. And I do believe, I'm concluding, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm fairly confident that that's exactly why we're stuck and why it would be pointless for us to exercise any more effort in this, because it will be futile. Without the manufacturer providing that information in the BIOS. And here's the thing, we want to make sure Maxtang is aware of this before they're sending out hundreds or thousands of machines that all are going to have a whole bunch of expensive support issues and damage to their reputation. So we're going to wait and hear back from them, and I suspect it's going to be a BIOS update. And I could be wrong. Let me be clear. I'm guessing. But I've reached a point of my diagnostic now where I feel like there's nowhere left for me to go. And I need a construction crew to come in here and cut a hole in the wall and put a door so I can get into the next room. I can walk around this room all day long. I'm not getting into the next room. I can't until somebody cuts a hole in the wall. So I'm not doing that. That's what I feel like figuratively on what's happening here. We're walking around in circles and we can't get out. The manufacturer needs to provide an exit for us. If they don't provide it, we can't do it. It may be possible for someone to do it, but that's well out of my pay grade, and furthermore, nothing you should ever have to do unless you're being paid to do it, and that's your career, that's your specialty. It is definitely not mine. Let me take a look in the chat and see if I'm missing anything here. You guys maybe have some suggestions I've missed, and I just want to make sure I'm covering it. Let's see. There should be links to the website for this product, as well as to yesterday's video review of this product in the video description below the video. Let's see. Oops. Just catching up on your chats here. I'm not ignoring you. I've missed a lot of conversations, so just bear with me for a moment while I catch up. John Williams said, I have a challenge today. It was a gigabyte motherboard that wouldn't let me enable secure boot. I did check some of Carey's videos, and it was easily solved. Thanks, Carey. That's what I thought I had to do yesterday. Oh, this is easy. And here we are. So I guess I jinxed myself. But I'm glad your issue was resolved. This is highly unusual. Terrell wants to know what would happen if you reset NVRAM. I don't think there's a way to reset NVRAM that I'm aware of. Doman 2000 said Windows old is a leftover of a clean 24H2 install. It's a known bug and you can delete it. Oh, you know what? I've never noticed it before. Okay. DougBetts says he can load those individual keys and the fields do populate. See, it's got to be in his BIOS. William Lynn mentions there's no BIOS update available. Yeah, I think some people join us late or they're not watching the whole video. Maybe they're doing something else. We've already covered this earlier. If you go back to the beginning and watch, we've already discussed this and went to the website. And it can be a little bit puzzling for me, you know, when I'm making a video and I'm covering all this information and then somebody asks a question we've already addressed. And it starts to occur to me they're not watching from the beginning, or they weren't paying attention. Maybe they left the room when we were talking about it. But I think from now on I'm going to train myself not to read those aloud, because it does get a little frustrating sometimes to have to keep repeating what I've already said because somebody arrived late or wasn't paying attention. That's why a lot of teachers, you know, if you're tardy to the classroom, they'll just tell you don't even come into class. It's really frustrating. I can't explain that enough. But you can certainly go back to the beginning and watch where we go through the support options and download options for this model earlier in today's video. Trevor says you could try setting the user password just to see what happens. So we've already done all this. We set the administrator password, and I appreciate your guessing, but your guess doesn't make any sense because we're not having any issue with access. In other words, when we go into a BIOS and if it's not letting us into a particular section because it's locked out, then a password request will be made. In other words, it'll say, if you want this option, you've got to enter admin mode. There'll be some indication. And then if admin mode requires a password, when we go into admin mode, that password prompt will be made available prior to letting us in. There is no sort of secret code word you have to say without being asked in order to unlock certain features. I've never seen a BIOS ever in my life work like that. It's getting us where we need to go. It's not loading the keys. So you got to ask yourself, where are the keys supposed to be? Well, the keys are supposed to be in the non-volatile RAM, which is what your BIOS is. Your BIOS is non-volatile RAM, NVRAM. And you go, okay, so if we can go into the options to set the keys, and we have options to load the keys, but no keys are loading, and they're supposed to load from the NVRAM, then there are no keys in the NVRAM to load. It's not a question of whether or not you have permission to access them, because they wouldn't be secured at that point. Those keys in and of themselves don't have any particular value with regards to securing behind a password, unless you as the end user choose to password protect your BIOS, which is often done in corporate environments where you don't want your employees mucking about with the PCs, creating unnecessary and expensive and time-consuming help desk support tickets to undo the damage your employee caused. That's generally what the passwords are for. They're not there to keep you out. They're there to keep other people out. So a manufacturer wouldn't sell you a computer for you, but then tell you you can't access it without their permission. There's never been an example of this in the history of me working in this field where that has ever occurred. Now, I have seen where there have been, and I'm talking 20 years ago, that you had to hit a certain shift F9 or something to get into an advanced mode of the BIOS that was otherwise not available. And that was something the users rebelled against. The builders just screamed and shouted bloody murder, and they immediately stopped doing that. And that's why you'll see now when you go into a BIOS, you'll have basic mode and expert or advanced mode, and it's very clear how to enter one or the other, and you are never, ever locked out from your own machine unless you yourself set the lock. And that's universally true across the base. If you find a computer ever in your life where what I'm telling you does not apply, please let me know the make and model. Again, we're always looking at what's different versus what's the same. We're always looking at when something doesn't work the way we expect it to work. The first place I go is, what's different about this? And without it specifically telling me, enter a password to get to this setting, there is no precedent for that. It's never, nobody does that. Nobody's done that for 20 plus years. If you have valid information proving that that's being done by somebody in the last 20 years, I'd like to see that, because it's not stopping us. I can't emphasize this enough. it's not stopping us from entering the product, the platform key. We can enter the key. It's not preventing us from going in there. It just has nothing to load. It's empty. There's nothing in there. It's not preventing us from going in there. We can go in there. They go, hey, you want access to the vault? Well, you got to have the password. No, you don't. The vault's open. Go on in. But the vault's empty. Yeah, well, of course it's empty. I mean, it's kind of hard for me to explain this, but I need you to let that go. That's all I'm trying to say. Here, find an example that gives you an excuse to stick to your story there, because it's just not a thing. And nor that it also lets us go into the product key, not the product key, the platform key. It's just it's not loading what's supposed to be there. It's just not there. We're not locked out. It's empty. Okay. I appreciate the suggestion. You need to let it go. Doman says Acer laptops do that. If you need to set you need to set a temporary password to change or turn off security UEFI settings. Are these consumer laptops or are these business laptops? Because I haven't seen an Acer product in a long time, but that's news to me. So I think at this point, we just have to be patient and wait to hear back from Maxtang. I was hopeful that DougBetts had the solution for us. It certainly made it look easy. I was like, oh, we can do this. And of course, I don't have it memorized on what I did yesterday. So I thought the best way to do this would be to go live, and let's just do it live. Make a video out of it, see what happens. And then the fact that Doug was able to join us and witness where our differences are between what he's experiencing and what I'm experiencing, because I believe Doug was pretty well confident that he had the solution. It sounded good to me. He demonstrated it. It clearly worked. He explained it quite well, but yet we have a different situation here where it appears the product keys were not, I keep calling them product keys, the platform key was not provided by the manufacturer. And that just seems to be the problem. Now, how that happened or why that happened is something Maxtang's going to have to explain to us. If it is something entirely different, and I am off base on this, if Maxtang tells us you've got to enter a password, well, I got to know what the password is and where to enter it in what order, because that doesn't make any sense. The only thing that makes sense to me is the product, I'm going to keep calling it a product key. The platform key simply wasn't programmed in. That's it. That explains everything. Everything is suddenly making sense. What doesn't make sense is how did you ship it without the platform key? You've shipped other computers before and didn't have this issue, so what's different about your manufacturing process this time around? Was this a fluke, or did every single one of these go out the same way? I suspect they all went out the same way. So we can't be the only one with the problem. And our goal here is to help Maxtang make a better product, make the best product they can. We want to be able to recommend them for consideration. If you're looking for a mini PC, I don't want to intentionally bring out a product I don't like and then tell you this is terrible and don't buy it. If I already know that going into it, I won't waste my time giving you any attention or giving it any of your attention, because the very fact of me bringing them up is press. You know what I mean? You might say, oh, maybe I'll check it out. I wouldn't promote it or introduce you to it if I didn't think it held promise. And I do understand we're dealing with a rather new brand here, and there's probably some growing pains and some learning that has to be done. This is unlike any other computer, even other small brands. We've never seen this problem before. This is a unique issue, and I think we're just going to have to be patient and wait for a response. And I will share that response with you. So if I'm wrong, I'll tell you I'm wrong. But if we're just going to sit here and throw darts at the wall guessing, we could be here for the next 10 hours. And if it's something only Maxtang can fix, we've just wasted 10 hours. There's a certain point where I feel like you've got to realize you've done your best. You need to call in the bigger guns. Let it go. This impatience and anxiety is going to eat you alive. If you realize you've given it your best effort, know when enough is enough, and to say, let's move on to something else. There's got to be other things we have to do. This isn't all I have going on in my life. I'm not going to dedicate too much time to this and let it monopolize my business and my time, and I don't think you should either. Unless you're getting paid to do that, it's not your job. We give it our best effort for a reasonable amount of time, after which, and the sooner we can cut loose our losses, the better, so we can recover the rest of our day to be more productive. Wait for Maxtang to respond, and that will be a faster, more efficient, and more sure way to get to our solution. I'm glad that we gave it a shot, all right? But the importance of knowing when is enough, when you keep doing the same thing over and over and you think you're going to get a different result, you are going insane. So at this point, I think the wise thing for me to do is to say, look, we did our best here. We did everything reasonable to do a little bit of experiment, a reinstall of the OS, the reload of the drivers, messed around with the BIOS in several different settings. I'm not going to go through every single possible setting in a BIOS that may or may not be related. I don't have that kind of time. I don't have that kind of patience. And I have other projects, that are waiting. But I wouldn't even have started today's video if I didn't think I had a solution. And the only way to know was to try it. I didn't say I had 10 or 12 possible solutions or 15 or 20. I had one. And that was following DougBetts' video from today. If he wouldn't have made that video, I wouldn't have made this video, and it would still be waiting on a Maxtang. But it didn't change anything. All the time we spent and the exploration we did, we've learned nothing. We are not any smarter today than we were yesterday, and we've not accomplished a darn thing. This has all been a huge waste of time. That's why I suggest when you buy a new product that doesn't work like it's supposed to, why would you waste your time? Even if you could fix it, why would you? Send it back and get a refund. Buy something else. Now, if a customer is paying me to repair this, and they've had it for a year, and this is a new problem that just started, and they're not in warranty anymore, that's an entirely different story. But when it's brand new out of the box and it's not working, and you are determined to fix it, companies love you. They'll send you broken products and keep taking your money. Why wouldn't they? But if you want companies to make better products that will work out of the box, you can't keep rewarding them with your money when they're sending you stuff that doesn't work. And that's my goal here, right? If I could provide Maxtang the solution, I would love to be able to say to them, you don't need to go to your engineers. I'll tell you how to fix it. I don't even know. So the Maxtang engineers will have to get back to the marketing department. Then the marketing department will get back to me. And then I will follow up with you when they follow up with me. In the meantime, this will go on a shelf and just sit because there's nothing more I can do with it. And we have lots of other projects coming up this week. As a reminder, tomorrow I've got the 9900X build. I need to put it in a case with a power supply and sort of get that all finished. Friday, we've got a big build planned with the Ultra 7, the Intel Ultra 7 with an ASRock Nova Z890 motherboard. We have a really nice Asus ProArt motherboard, Z890, with a ProArt 360 liquid cooler and a ProArt case with an Ultra 9. I was able to get my hands on an Ultra 9, which is ridiculously stupid and a waste of money. And we'll put a T705 Crucial 2 terabyte drive in there that runs at 14,500 megabytes per second. Insane Gen 5 read speeds. That is going to be a content creation monster. Just an absolute beast. It's going to have 0 RGB. This is a workstation. This is meant to help the world go round. This is not meant to distract you and to squander your precious time here on Earth as a game or a toy. It could be used that way. Don't get me wrong. I have no intention of using it that way. I don't even need this kind of power. But it was a great excuse to review the new Asus ProArt motherboard, case, and liquid cooler. And so with your contributions and your support, I was able to buy the power supply, the storage, the CPU. And just those 3 components alone, you're looking at about $1,000. That doesn't include the motherboard that Asus has sent us, the cooler that Asus has sent us, or the case that Asus has sent us. So I use that as an excuse to go big. Let's just go big on this. And I couldn't even find an Ultra 9. I ended up putting my name on a waiting list at B&H Photo. And they said, hey, we got some in stock. Now the same is being held true, I understand, for the 9800 X3D everybody wants. They ship those literally every week. Every single week. Newegg gets more, Amazon gets more, B&H Photo get them every week. So if you think it's going to be a month before you get one, not likely. If you just watch, or if it's like B&H Photo, you can put your name on a list. As soon as that inventory comes in, if you act quickly, you'll get one. I don't understand what all the hype is about, honestly. I don't get it. It's 17% faster. Who cares? But I don't have to. It's the market. People go crazy and throw their money at something. Who am I to get in the way of that? Honestly, if it were easy to get, we'd probably just do a build video because the interest is so high for something I can't even explain. It's a cultural phenomenon. It doesn't make any logical sense. But if that's what gets viewers to the channel, I'd be a fool not to get one. But I'm not going to pay $300 over retail price like scalpers are charging for something that's only 17% faster. That's insane. Anyway, to each their own. That's the best I can explain it. Let's see here. BIOS with Acer. Search enable or disable secure boot on an Acer notebook. I'd have to have it in front of me. See, that's the thing a lot of people don't understand. I either need to see somebody who's made a video demonstrating it, or I have to have the machine in front of me and have that experience. The conjecture and what people say, or even what a manual says, it holds very little value to me because I find my personal experience varies greatly from what is said and what is written. And that's why I encourage each and every one of you to have your own personal experience. And if you have a way to share that with us through making a YouTube video yourself, because anybody can do it now with a phone, just make the video and show us, post it, share the link with us so we can experience it with you. Talking about experience is very different from having experience. And while I can't have you all here in the room lending me a hand, the least I can do, or the closest I should say I can get to that, is by filming live, unscripted and unedited, no differently than if you were in the room with me. So we can share the experience together. You don't have to take my word for anything. Just look at the video, watch the cause, watch the symptom or the effect, and throughout together, we're learning at the exact same pace, having the exact same experience, versus if I wrote it down, or if I simply read it from somewhere else and then repeated it back to you. Those are two very different sources of information regarding quality and accuracy. I just don't think you can get more accurate than real life. If there's a way to get more accurate than that, I'd like to know what it is. All right, let's see. Bill Stott said, if you did not try, you've already failed. Well, there is a point of realizing, and I agree with you, but you've got to have a point where common sense has to kick in and say, this is above me. I need to bring an expert in. when I'm renovating Studio C, there's certain work I can do. I can do electrical work. I can hang ceiling fans. I can change doorknobs and door hinges and fix doors that are not closing right. I can straighten those. I can do that. When it comes to the patience required for texturing and painting a wall or filling in a hole and then blending it so you can't tell a hole was there, I don't have the patience and I don't have the talent. But I know people who do. So I know this is a minor plumbing problem. I can fix this, for example, or this is a major plumbing issue and I need to bring somebody in who's a plumbing expert or is more familiar with plumbing than I am. I know where my limits are in that regard, and I won't even entertain the idea of attempting to fix it myself, because then I'm going to spend 3 times more money, take 3 times longer than an expert, and I might even injure myself or make the problem worse in the process. That's the cost of learning. And while I'm doing all that, I'm not spending my time doing what I do know how to do, which means I'm not making any money. I'm spending money. There's a Learn to DIY YouTube channel, and he's got a t-shirt that says, why pay someone to do it when you can DIY and pay 3 times more and take 3 times longer? You know, that's great if you have the time, but I would much rather use the knowledge I have as a way to help others in my community and also generate a way to pay my bills. And in my free time, I would like to take a break. I wouldn't mind getting out of town. I don't want to have to go work on something else because I'm too cheap to pay somebody to do it. Ultimately, having to pay somebody to not only fix what was wrong to begin with, but the additional damage that I may have caused, or the additional parts that I bought that now I have to return because I was buying all the wrong things. Guy's changing his starter in his car. He can't get the bolt out. I'm like, what are you doing? His car won't start. I got to change the starter out, but I just can't get enough leverage on the bolt to break the starter free. Starters don't go out in cars, modern cars, very often. Car's not that old. The weather's getting colder, and that's when batteries typically die, is when the weather's getting from hot to cold or cold to hot. If you've got a battery on the edge, that's going to kill it. That's when you're going to experience it. Here in the desert, we go through 6 months of 100-degree weather, and then suddenly it's dropping to 40 degrees at night, and now your car won't start. That's what killed the battery. An older battery. Shouldn't happen to a relatively new battery, but if the battery's 2 years old or older, that has been my experience over and over and over again. The weather changes, that's when that older battery dies. So this guy's trying to take his starter out, and he just can't get it out, and he's frustrated, and he's buying tools. He's buying tools. And I'm like, why are you buying these tools? Because I can't get enough torque to get this bolt out. I got the other bolt out, I just can't get the last one out. He's under the car, dangerously, I might add. And I say, well, what gave you the idea? It's the starter. How did you get here? And I took the battery into the auto parts store and they tested it and it tested fine. Okay, but they're auto parts store workers. They're not mechanics. You know, why did you think what they told you was true? Oh, they're the expert. I go, they're not experts. If they understood how to fix cars, they would make a lot more money as mechanics. There's a reason why they're not mechanics. Not to insult anybody that works at an auto parts store. It's a job. But they're not mechanics, and just because they put your battery on a tester and said it tests good doesn't mean you have a good battery. So I just took a little jump starter pack and I said, put the bolts back into the starter. Leave the starter alone. Let me just see for myself, right? I'm tired of hearing all these words. Let me experience what led you here. So first of all, try and start the car, and the car won't start. The battery's bad. He goes, there, see, it's clicking, click, click, click. I go, yeah, that's what happens when the battery dies. Yes, that can also be a symptom when the starter dies, but batteries are more often going to die than starters ever will on a modern car. So let me just take a jump starter, place it on the battery, and they got these little jump start packs. They're like this big. They'll jump your car 30, 40 times on a single charge. Or use jumper cables. Hook it up, say, try it now, starts. Shut it off, try it again, starts. Shut it off, try it again, starts. There's nothing wrong with your starter, man. You got a bad battery the whole time. Well, then why did it test good? Well, here we go. Who cares? Who cares? It's a bad battery. You want to be a mechanic or you want to get this car working? If you want to get the car working, go get a battery. Get on with life. There's other things to do. If he would have taken the car to Walmart, just to give you an example, when you buy a car battery at Walmart, Walmart will install it for you for free. This whole issue could have been resolved by not trying to do it himself. But it took him days and it cost him money. If you're not able to get to work because your car's not working and you got to take a day of leave because there's no way for you to get to work, you're losing money. It's costing you money. But I can't afford to pay somebody to fix it. There was no charge. You had to buy a battery one way or the other. If you'd have bought it over there at Walmart, they'd have put it in for free. Well, you know, lesson learned. But at some point, I think it's important to recognize when you've gone as far as you can go. You make the attempt, you get, okay, this isn't right. You know, the minute you need to buy special tools, you have to make an investment in tools you've never needed in your life to take off a starter. That's where I would have stopped and said, you know what? I'm not going to spend money on tools that I'm only going to use once in my life. There's a mechanic that has this tool. This mechanic can take this off probably with a pneumatic air gun in 2 seconds. Just it's off. But it never needed to come off to begin with. That's what drives me crazy. So yes, we can fix things ourselves, but we can't fix everything ourselves. And depending on our skills, depending on our tools, and depending on our willingness and our patience, that's going to be different for each one of us. And each one of us has to call it. Each one of us has to say, okay, at this point, this is beyond me, or I don't even want to get started on this project. It'll often be faster and cheaper to pay somebody who knows what they're doing, not some friend who says, I'll do this for you. Somebody who actually does it for a living can probably do it faster and cheaper than you can do it yourself, depending on what it is and depending on what your skills are. So just something to keep in mind. We often can fix any computer that comes in here for repair, but there are times where it doesn't make any sense. And there are times where we can't because our hands are tied, such as in this case, or in the case of a lot of Apple products where the product is serialized, you know, each little component has to be authenticated. And it ties the hands, not the skill, it ties the hands of the repair person. And that's an experienced repair person. Imagine just a hobbyist getting into it for the first time. That'll be very discouraging as an experience. You'll never want to do it again. It'll leave you with PTSD. So anyway, just some thoughts on that. But I'm glad we were able to give this a shot. I'm glad we tried. I certainly appreciate DougBetts taking the time to make the video and go through that explanation, because I do believe it's going to help others who have a more common secure boot issue where it just simply needs to be enabled. That's far more common. Having this happen to you is highly unlikely, but nonetheless, the fact that it's happened, I'm in it now to have to find an answer, but I just need to wait for Maxtang to give me that solution. So we just need to set it aside. And like I said, we have so many other things, so many other projects to do. And those are definitely in my lane. we won't hit a stumbling point like this with all these other projects. And those projects will wait while this sits on the bench. And that doesn't make sense either. So for those reasons, we will follow up. And we will have a solution for this. Once we have it, we'll share it with you. But I just don't know when that's going to be. It's whenever Maxtang gets back to us. If that's tomorrow or if that's 3 weeks from now, I have no control over it. And I got plenty to do in the meantime. So this will just sit on a shelf as is. I'm just going to unplug it, put it back in the box, and put it on a shelf over there. And then when they follow up, they follow up. But I will not be trying to repair this anymore. We're done. But I appreciate your suggestions and for hanging out. Thank you to all the members for making today's video possible. And again, just looking here in the chat room. Paul says, thanks for sharing this with us today. I have to agree, this is a vendor issue to solve. Personally, I followed your advice on brand new products. Back in the box and return it if it doesn't work out of the box. Jason Wyrick said, well, you did learn something today. You learned none of your solutions that you tried worked. I'm not quite sure what good that knowledge does me, but I suppose you're right. Where are we at on the video? An hour and 50. All right, so 10 minutes. 10 minutes will be the 2-hour mark. I do like to limit these to 2 hours if possible. If you have any questions, I certainly want to give you a chance to interact with me on any subject tech related that I can answer for you. This will be the time to ask, as you have my undivided attention in the chat room. Scott says my Ace Magician T8 Plus has a similar BIOS from AMI. No idea how or where to get updates. Normally, there are no updates for a mini PC BIOS. It's very unusual for that to occur. So when you see a BIOS update from B-Link or Minis Forum or any small PC manufacturer, that's not normal. And the reason for that is all the parts are built at the factory, so these parts don't magically change. It's not like you can go and buy something that needs an update to be compatible like when you build your own machine. If you're referring to driver updates, those are from the manufacturer. So if it's an AMD chipset driver, it's the AMD Adrenalin software you get directly from AMD. If it's Intel, the chipset driver, you get directly from Intel. If it's your network card driver, Wi-Fi driver, those you get directly from the network card chip maker, be it Intel, Realtek, or MediaTek, for example. ASMedia typically does sound. If you're looking for a sound driver, my question is, what are you trying to fix? If you're just looking for updates when everything is working, you're looking for a problem, in my opinion. When an update is presented to you, like Windows updates, I think it's very important you prioritize installing that whenever it's convenient. You don't have to stop everything you're doing. But at the end of the day, before you shut everything down, go ahead and put that update on and get it over with. But if you have to go looking for updates when you're not experiencing any problems, what you're looking for is to have problems, in my opinion. It's like everything is working, and your thought is, how can I make it work better? Likely you're not going to make it work better. You're only going to make it work worse. So if it's working, and you're just looking for updates for the sake of looking for updates, I cannot condone that logic. If you're having a problem with something and you're looking to solve that problem, you should let us know what the problem is here in the chat room, and we can help you resolve it. It may not be a resolution through an update. So that's the best advice I can give you. When you build your own computer and you're sourcing, your motherboard and your RAM and your CPU and your cooler and your power supply, all these different component manufacturers may be different. Maybe your power supply is from 2008. Maybe your CPU is brand new. Maybe your motherboard is an AM5 motherboard from 2 years ago, but you're buying the new 9800 X3D. You've got to put the update on to the BIOS in order for that board to see that chip. That's to be expected. But you're not going to be changing any of that in a mini PC. There should be very little reason to ever have an update on a mini PC. Outside of Windows updates, we've seen updates from Minis Forum to enable RAID mode, where the early models that we received for review, they were pre-sale, or not pre-sale, sort of like prototypes. And they weren't quite finished yet. As a result, they let us know ahead of time, hey, this feature isn't going to work, but it will by the time we ship it. It's just waiting on a BIOS update. In the case of the G7 Ti, that BIOS update took a while. And then once we enabled it, it didn't make any sense to have it. So now that we've got it and you've been able to test it, it's like, well, why would you even use this feature? It doesn't even make any sense to me. But they advertised it as having RAID mode, and I wanted to test it. If they didn't advertise it with RAID mode, I'd have been none the wiser and never would have gone down that road. So there had to be a BIOS update to enable that. So that's a rare example of why a BIOS update would come out for a mini PC. There's always exceptions, but it's just not a normal thing to look for updates on a laptop or even a mini PC the same way you would on a desktop. It's those Windows updates that are critical. And on a lot of laptops, you're going to get your BIOS update through Windows Update anyway, if one is necessary. But again, if you're having a specific, and I want to reiterate this, if you're having an issue you're trying to resolve, let us know what the issue is and let us help you. But if all you're doing is trying to tune and tune and tune something that's already tuned and working well, you're likely going to break it. And then you'll be here with a problem that we can help you with. So one way or another, if you have a problem or you create one, we're here to help. Phil Stodd says, have you ever experienced the Windows administrator account not being able to access the Microsoft Store, but a local account on the same machine works fine? Well, not specifically, because I don't really use the Microsoft Store, very rarely. But I can tell you having corrupted user profiles is pretty routine. It's been a thing since Windows XP. And if your user profile is corrupt, and especially if it's the admin account, probably what you need to do is create a new admin account in the control panel, add a new user, give that user administrator permission, then copy whatever documents, if you've got bookmarks, favorites, pictures, videos, music, out of that admin account into your new one, and then delete the old admin account. Just get rid of it. That's how we fix that, by simply resetting, by creating a new account. It's a pretty simple fix. Trying to figure out which file is corrupted is a little more complicated because it could be in one of the user registry hives. And then when you fix it, it could be just like a big house of cards that collapses down. So we don't recommend that, especially for time and money involved. Just faster to recreate the new account. That'll likely solve it for you, at least in my experience. If it doesn't, let us know. Paul Strasser says, from what I know, Secure Boot has to be loaded before installing Windows. And the manufacturer usually puts your keys in there, but there's a way to load your own key. I don't know how. I would imagine, like in a corporate environment where they're getting hundreds or thousands of computers, that a corporation may require their own keys being used. I don't know that that option exists on a consumer PC. So it's quite possible that the BIOSes, well, I know for a fact, the BIOSes in business class computers are quite different from that of end user computers. That's pretty common. Now, how they do that, I don't know. I haven't been in the corporate environment since Secure Boot became a thing, so we were never trained on how to do that. But, you know, when you work for a corporation, you do things the way they tell you to, not the way some YouTube channel says. Scott says he doesn't have any problems with his Ace Magic T8. He's just wondering. He says he put the Intel Update Assistant on it and updated his graphics driver, no problems. I'm just wondering, as the system I built updates the BIOS every few months. Again, the system you built allows you to change things. There's really not much you can change in one of these. So your CPU is soldered to the board and your board isn't coming out. You know, you're not going to replace your motherboard. It can come out, don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is it's not meant to come out. It's not meant. A school bus is not a sports car. If you're looking for a sports car, buy a sports car. And if you're looking for a school bus, buy a school bus. If you say my sports car has a convertible top, but I can't figure out how to make the top open on my school bus, that's because you bought a school bus. They don't come with convertible tops. So understand what it is you bought and what differentiates it from something else you bought. These are not the same, and so to expect the same things from them, they're very, very different. For example, if you were to build from parts the equivalent of your Ace Magic T8, I bet it'll cost you $100 to $200+ more than having everything all built into one. It's compact, it's all factory done for you. You get a lot more bang for your buck, but at the same time, you don't have all the freedom of configuration. Same is true with Apple products, except you pay more for Apple products, but you're locked in. You can't make those changes. The result of being able to make those changes requires more BIOS updates for all the millions of variable possibilities that one user might choose versus another, times multiple users in every continent across the country, across the world. As a result, you have millions upon millions of variables and combinations that are potentially unique to each individual builder based on what CPU they use, what RAM they use, how much, which sockets, which cooler, which case, which power supply, which, are they overclocking it? You know, what are they doing with it? Sometimes there's security issues where the BIOS may have an exploit and they need to patch that for security, even if it's unlikely you would ever be a victim. Let's just go ahead and lock it anyway. Sometimes you see BIOS updates on these for that reason too, but it's pretty uncommon. As the machine ages, also, you're less likely to get updates regardless, but it's just not a normal thing on a mini PC to need anything other than Windows updates. And if such a thing were required, we'd certainly make a video about it because that's how uncommon it is. So different types of machines, different types of maintenance, different types of expectations for different reasons. Speaking of security updates, Synology just released a very important update to their latest DSM. And I mean, this is critically important. Now, hopefully, if you own a Synology, you've got it set to automatically update and you don't have to worry about it. But if you own a Synology, I strongly encourage you to log into it and in your control panel, check your update icon and see if there's an update waiting. And if there is, I would immediately, and I mean immediately, put that update on. This is no joke. This is a critically important update. I would also encourage you to turn automatic updates on your Synology so that you don't have to manually do this. It'll happen all by itself if you allow it to. And if you want to learn more about that, there are some NAS-only channels here, like Space Rex and NAS Compares, that can get into the nitty-gritty as why this update is so important and how vulnerable you will be if you don't update it. So I would make that a very high priority update. Now, when it comes to network-attached storage devices, these kind of critical updates are pretty regular occurrence, unfortunately, for all manufacturers, not necessarily at the same time. And if your network attached storage unit is made by D-Link, I mean, they're just abandoned. D-Link just abandons their customers. That's what they've always done. They're just going to tell you, well, we haven't made that in 5 years. We're not going to pay any money to develop an update for it. Yeah, it's insecure, but that's also because it's 5 years old. So what do you want? So I don't buy D-Link products. They've had this exact dismissive behavior where they won't even support their own products after a relatively short period of time, in my opinion. And how they're still in business is beyond me. But if you type in, like Google search D-Link Tom's Hardware, there's a history of news reports going all the way back to about 2012, where it's like D-Link isn't going to update their router, D-Link isn't going to update their NAS, D-Link has a security issue and you should replace it, D-Link, D-Link, D-Link. How is this company still in business? And you know what you've not seen on this channel? D-Link products. When's the last time I've shown you a D-Link product? Why do you think that is? So again, I wouldn't bring a product on just to put it down. If I already know what to expect from a company coming out of the gate and it's not good, I don't want to give them any time of day, let alone mention their name, even though I just did. But that's because of this Synology update and how it relates. Because ASUS has NASes, QNAP has NASes, TerraMaster has NASes. And when they came out with updates, anytime they come out with updates, I strongly recommend you adopt them as soon as you possibly can. So this is just more of the same. Scott says, thanks for the information, much appreciated. Well, thanks for hanging out with us, Scott. All good, all good. I hope your T8 is working well for you. You know, we haven't had any issues with any of the Ace Magic or Ace Magician, Cam Rui, Miniswarm. They've all been really, really good. My personal, as you can tell by the number of Miniswarm products you see on this channel, my personal favorite is Miniswarm. If I were going to buy a mini PC, and I have bought them, they're Miniswarm. That's not to say others aren't good. In fact, that last Ace Magic, or the one before last, the spaceship looking thing, it's a great little PC. I wouldn't want to have to work on it, but you shouldn't have to. That's the idea. If you want something to work on, build it yourself and it'll be fully user serviceable. If you want something to just take out of the box, plug in and start using it, and you want to save money, buy one that's already pre-built. On the other hand, if you buy it pre-built, and we're going to come around to full circle, and it doesn't work like it's supposed to, send it back. And I don't see any other questions in the chat room, so I guess that'll wrap it up for us for today. I want to thank you for joining me on this sort of last minute video. I just wanted to get it done. I wanted my curiosity answered, and I didn't want to do it in secret. I wanted to invite you all here so we can share the experience, for better or for worse. I could have done this off camera, and I thought, no, I'd like to be transparent. I want you to see everything going on. So if we did succeed, I didn't want to have to go back and try and recreate what I did, because that's a nightmare. And that's why today's video happened. I hope you'll join us tomorrow as we conclude our 9900X build from AMD. That's a monster of a machine. And Friday, we'll do the Ultra 7 brand new build. We're going to prep the motherboard. It'll eventually go into the case on a second part, the normal process. And then, of course, the week after that, as previously mentioned, the Asus ProArt, which is going to be a whole flagship computer. And I got a feeling somebody I know is going to be using it when we're done. That'll wrap it up for us for today. Thank you for watching. Thanks to Mara, of course, for all the work she does in the background. Thanks for each and every one of you hanging out with us today. All our members, thank you so much for making these videos possible. Our friends at Acronis and RoboForm and SCD Keys, we can't thank them enough for offering you guys a 30% discount on products that are already, there's like a fly in here that's very distracting. Products that are already very well discounted for the value you get. They're offering you an additional 30% off. All the links, if you're interested in taking advantage of those sales, are in the video notes below, as are the links to the Maxtang. Thank you to Maxtang for sending this to us, and we'll look forward to sharing their response and solution with you when we get it. We'll just, again, keep everything we do on this on camera. And that's just the way I like to run things. Not just for Maxtang, but in general. I don't like to do work off camera and then show you guys, oh, here's the end result. That's pretty much what everybody else does. That'll wrap it up. We'll see you all hopefully tomorrow, 1 o'clock Arizona time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. I hope you'll join us then. A shout out and a thanks to our good friends Buster, Oystein, Frankie B, and Paul Gray, who are very generous contributors here, and to all of you, each and every one of you, for your super chats, your membership, just even your friendships. And one last check so I don't make the same mistake I did yesterday. I don't think I'm missing anything. We did get an update from Mitch, which I'll share with you tomorrow. He is in Rio de Janeiro, and he's got some incredible footage to share with us. I hope you'll join us and enjoy it with us tomorrow. Until next time, bye for now.